The NFL draft is officially in the books, and we are here to break down all of the winners and losers from fantasy football in this episode of the Fantasy Football Fellows. Welcome in. My name is Lucas Wenzel, and as always, I am joined by my fellow co-host, Tyler Plath. We will be bringing you 8 fantasy winners and losers post-NFL draft in today's episode. Ty, scale of 1 to 10. How are you feeling after the NFL draft?
Man, I feel like a 7 or an 8 probably. You know, I'm still kind of recovering from the bit of a schedule change that we went through on the first night and then the second night and the third night that I went through. But man, there's nothing quite like the NFL draft, and it really kind of kicks things off for fantasy football, at least in the dynasty sense. So it's exciting to actually kind of get into the groove a little bit of, wow, this player went to this team. How does that affect these players and stuff? So I'm a 7 or an 8. I'm feeling pretty good.
Yeah, we will be breaking down who is most positively impacted and who is most negatively impacted. We're going to dive in with the losers, and Ty, I'm not going to keep the people waiting any longer. Let's dive in to the meat and potatoes of this episode. So how this is going to work, Tyler and I are each going to bring you 2 winners and 2 losers in terms of fantasy football from the draft. We have all of our reasonings and everything all laid out here. We're ready to back our points until we're blue in the face. We'll die on the hills of all these players. Well, not entirely, but there are some takes in here that some people may not agree with. And you can let us know in the comments exactly how you feel. If you're not, I forgot to mention this up front, if you're not subscribed to the pod already, please do. That helps us out a ton. And if you're not subscribed on YouTube already, we would much appreciate you subscribing to our channel. We're going to have all sorts of new content coming out. We're up to 2 episodes a week now. We're dropping a YouTube video every single week as well. We're going to start releasing 2 a week come June. We have so much content in store for you all. So if you're not subscribed on YouTube already, make sure you are. But Ty, let's start with the winners from the NFL draft in terms of fantasy football. I think we'll start off with maybe 2 obvious ones, but then these other 2, I think some people may not even realize that they are winners or how they are winners. So why don't you kick us off here with your first biggest winner from the 2023 NFL draft?
Yeah, I'll start with the more obvious, I should say the biggest name of the list. It's Tony Pollard, and this just makes my heart happy. I'm a Tony Pollard manager in my dynasty league, and it was a big worry of mine that Dallas could take a running back, and it was talked about almost everywhere that Dallas could look to take a running back day 1, maybe even day 2. They eventually took a running back, but it was on day 3 in Deuce Vaughn, and I don't really expect Deuce Vaughn. It made my heart so happy. But from the NFL perspective, I'm not really expecting Deuce Vaughn to give Tony Pollard a run for his money. And so with that being said, Tony Pollard's kind of biggest competition now in Dallas is Malik Davis and Ronald Jones. And I'm not going to try to sit here and slander Malik Davis and Ronald Jones, but I think we would all agree that Tony Pollard is levels above those guys. But we need to discuss just kind of how big of a win this is for Tony Pollard, because this backfield is now his. It belongs to him. And Malik Davis will kind of be Tony, let's get you a breather, but I don't expect either of those guys to really kind of cut into his workload. And again, this is a huge win because we look at Tony Pollard's stats when it was just his backfield, when Ezekiel Elliott was still on the team. It only happened in 3 games, but he put up 31.2 fantasy points, 33.7 fantasy points, and 21.8 fantasy points in those 3 games. Good for an average of 28.9 fantasy points per game. He had 2 games over 100 rushing yards. He had 6 rushing touchdowns in total. Again, 28.9 fantasy points on average when it was just him and no Ezekiel Elliott in the backfield. Conversely, with games with Ezekiel Elliott, he averaged 9.5 fantasy points in 56 games. And I was like, well, his 2019, his rookie year, probably skews that total probably. It doesn't. It actually stays the same. It's still at 9.5. So, look, Tony Pollard, huge winner. He is now confirmed top 10. I think we could see top 5 buzz from Tony Pollard eventually, just because people are going to give him the big market inflation and all that kind of stuff. But again, Tony Pollard is a huge winner with no added competition.
Yeah, 100%. And one thing I will add is I've been unfortunately stuck with a few Zeke shares across dynasty leagues. The Cowboys are open to bringing him back. Jerry Jones has said they haven't shut the door on that. That being said, they've now clearly prioritized Tony Pollard. And even with Zeke back, I'm not going to be surprised if we still get top 10 buzz from Tony Pollard. And I'm not going to be surprised if we get top 10 production from Tony Pollard as well. He is undoubtedly a winner. The Cowboys did not have a Jahmyr Gibbs, did not have a Bijan fall to them. Even a Zach Charbonnet didn't even make it to the Cowboys. So they were kind of SOL unless they wanted to reach on a Kendra Miller or Roschon Johnson. But you wouldn't see the Cowboys doing that when they got hyper efficient, absolutely electric Deuce Vaughn, who's an itty bitty baby boy at what is he, 5?
Oh, put some respect on him. Don't give him that.
Well, he's an itty bitty baby boy. He is. How tall is he?
He's
that man is only like 5'4".
He's 5'5".
Yeah, he's an itty bitty baby boy. I'm taller than that man. Now, is he stronger than me? Yes, but that boy is small. At any rate, Tony Pollard is a massive winner. I would 100% agree. I was also shocked that this next player did not have a running back drafted to replace him, and I thought it would be highly likely that this team would invest in more of a downhill, hard-nosed, straight through the tackles running back. Rachaad White of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, he is a massive winner from this draft. He somehow escaped competition in the draft. I should probably pull up a report to see if the Buccaneers officially signed Sean Tucker, but undrafted free agent Sean Tucker, not third round draft capital Rachaad White last year. Sean Tucker, great between the tackles, hard-nosed guy, but undrafted free agent. He took a dip in his final year in college, and the Buccaneers managed to scoop him up as an undrafted free agent. But the thing about Rachaad White is he's not a fabulous rusher, which is why I'm surprised that the Buccaneers didn't draft him. Right, Rachaad White, he was 36th in attempts last year, and he was only averaging 3.7 yards per carry, 3.6 true yards per carry if you want to have the true yards per carry metric as well. Either way, 65th amongst all running backs last year. He was not good. That being said, he was still 12th in running back targets, 11th in receptions amongst running backs as well. Like, I see this as a team that's still going to want to use Rachaad White in the passing attack, especially with a Kyle Trask, a Baker Mayfield, someone who maybe isn't going to push the ball downfield as much to a Mike Evans. You'll get a lot for Chris Godwin in the slot, but I still see this as Rachaad White still probably likely to pick up 45 targets next year. And if he does get a bulk of the rushing work, that's only more positive for Rachaad White. So as of right now, until the Tampa Bay Buccaneers bring in somebody like an Ezekiel Elliott or a more hard nose between the tackles kind of guy, Rachaad White is a massive winner from the draft. And you can't tell me otherwise right now. My multiple shares of Rachaad White in dynasty leagues are very happy at this given moment, and he still holds value. I almost got rid of him before the draft, but he still holds value, and I am very pleased with that, as he's a pass catching specialty running back on a team that I think probably will be checking down a decent amount this year. All right, made through 2 winners. Ty, why don't you bring us your second winner? And this is where we're going to get into some ones where people are like, oh, yeah, they kind of are a winner, aren't they? So who's your second winner?
My second winner is James Conner. If you don't know who James Conner is, he's the running back of the Arizona Cardinals. This one was an interesting one because Arizona had a lot of different positions of need in the draft. And that plus a new regime, new head coach, new front office, a lot of people kind of speculated that they could look running back in the later rounds just to bring in more talent and potentially just kind of bite into Connor's workload from a fantasy perspective. That didn't happen. And now it is still James Conner's backfield with competition from Keontae Ingram, who I don't think is going to really provide much of a challenge for him. And the other one is Corey Clement. And I feel the same way about him. So, you know the workload that he's about to get, and an even bigger plus is the new offensive coordinator that he gets in Drew Petzing, and he has a very favorable running back history. And I will put out the disclaimer: he hasn't coached running backs before. His background is wide receivers. He's had a bit of quarterback coaching experience. But why it's favorable is because of where he's coached and where he's coming from. He worked in Minnesota and Cleveland, two places that have a very, very dominant and heavily featured running back, Dalvin Cook and Nick Chubb, where there has been little competition, or I shouldn't say little competition, but little to no shortage of work for those guys. So you put all those things together and you look at the running back and the style of running back that James Conner is. Downhill runner, decent hands out of the backfield. It's kind of a recipe for success, in my opinion. And the fact, again, that they didn't bring any kind of competition in a rookie running back makes this a super, super ideal situation. And you know that he'll get usage because Arizona is just going to kind of have to do something while they wait for Kyler to return from his ACL injury. So big winner in James Conner again. He's kind of a slept-on winner, and people have kind of forgotten about him, but he is one of the biggest winners after the draft.
Yeah, and it's not like James Conner's a spring chicken, right? Like, that dude is past the age in which you should be relevant for a running back and be getting a workhorse load of touches. I guess unless your name is Derrick Henry, of course, Adrian Peterson, but like James Conner is not built like those dudes. Yet here he is still leading a backfield in Arizona. And like you said, they're going to have to rely on him still. Without Kyler, they have heavily relied on him. So yeah, he is absolutely a winner. I am shocked. Again, they didn't bring in somebody like a Kendre Miller, a Devon A-Chain, somebody to help take the load off of James Conner. Apparently Keontae Ingram and Corey Clement are good enough. I will forever wonder what the Arizona Cardinals are doing. I mean, they did get Kyler Murray protection, but I mean, yeah, James Conner still very fantasy relevant after the draft. My second winner is from the Tennessee Titans, and his name is Treylon Burks. Here's the thing about Treylon Burks. The Titans, yeah, they did absolutely nothing to shore up their wide receiver room in the draft. They took Colton Dowell. Ty, you know where he went to college?
If I'm not mistaken, and if I remember the broadcast correctly, it was University of Tennessee Martin.
UT Martin, baby. UT Martin in the 7th round. Yeah, he's not going to provide any competition for Treylon Burks, okay? Treylon Burks, again, went unscathed, is the clear and away wide receiver 1 in Tennessee. Nick Westbrook-Akine, I believe he is still a Tennessee Titan. Kyle Phillips, I believe, is still a Tennessee Titan. Treylon Burks, greater sign than both of those dudes, okay? You now have Will Levis on backup duty now as well, should the Titans hold on to Ryan Tannehill. If they don't hold on to Ryan Tannehill, I mean, Will Levis could be it could be a lot worse than Will Levis. That's what I'll say. It could be a lot worse than Will Levis. Now, I don't have any like raw metrics to give you to like support Treylon Burks as like he's going to be just fine in year 2 and how he's going to be this massive winner after the draft. I mean, the massive win is that the Titans drafted no competition for him. They're rolling in with Traylon Burks and Chikakonko essentially as their top 2 pass catchers next year. Volume is king in fantasy. Traylon Burks is still elite after the catch. We're talking about a guy who had 16 yards per reception each of the 3 years he was in college. Look, he's in a great spot to make a year 2 leap. The offense isn't going to be super dynamic, but as long as Derrick Henry is there to have the threat of the run game, Traylon Burks will have all the play action opportunities in the world with Ryan Tannehill or Will Levis under center. It's just a matter of getting the football into his hands. And he started to come on at the end of last season. So I'm excited for Traylon Burks. He is a massive winner here after the NFL draft going into the 2023 season with little to no competition. This might be a short one, Ty. We're only about 17 minutes into the episode, but what I'm going to do is give the people a little break here. We're going to hear from our friends over at Underdog Fantasy. Let's drop Best Ball Mania 4. $15 million in prizes. Are you kidding me?
Oh, and $3 million to the first place winner.
$3 million to first place. If you want your chance at $3 million, $15 million in prizes, promo code fellas. Link is down in the description of the YouTube video or audio podcast you're listening to. Go get in. Come on. Go get your shot. Go get your shot at $3 million bucks. See if you can
try one. Just try one.
One. If you can try one. And then when you're like, oh, you know what? I actually really want to try and win $3 million. You can submit more entries. Use our code fellas. They're going to double your first deposit up to $100. So you're getting 8 entries. If you throw in 100, they're going to double that. You're going to get 8 entries. They're going to give you 4 for free. Promo code fellas. Link is down in the description of the audio podcast or YouTube video that you're listening to. But if you don't believe us, you can hear from our friends over at Underdog Fantasy. So we take a quick break. Today's podcast episode is brought to you by our friends over at Underdog Fantasy. Now, we love Underdog. It is the easiest place to play best ball formats, and they even have their own form of player props called Pick'em. You can make up to 20 times your money on a single night by correlating props together. 2 picks will triple your money, 3 will 6 times it, 4 will 10 times it, and 5 plays that all hit will multiply your entry by 20. You can even place insurance on your picks too, so if only 4 of your 5 props hit, you still get 10 times your entry. And if you use our code fellas when signing up, Underdog is going to double your first deposit up to $100. Alrighty, we are back. Gonna bring in the losers, and Ty is gonna sound a whole lot better now. We figured out his mic issues over the break. I'm turning darker on my picture. we're having a good old time here on the Fantasy Football Fellas podcast tonight. Ty, let's wrap up this episode here with the biggest fantasy losers from the 2023 NFL draft in terms of fantasy football. Let's just knock the obvious ones out of the way. Can we do that? Can we just knock the obvious ones out of the way?
Totally.
I'll let you start with your nice new clear crystal voice now coming through.
I feel like this needs to be running bit now.
Right. Who is the biggest loser fantasy wise from the 2023 NFL draft? I think we both agree.
It's got to be Kenneth Walker.
Yeah.
It absolutely has to be. And it's not because we are all of a sudden out on the talent that is Kenneth Walker. But we preached this last year. We will preach it again this year. Situation matters.
Yep.
Okay. It absolutely matters. Kenneth Walker going into, or I really should say, going into the offseason, figured to have the entire workload to himself. No more Rashad Penny, no other competition really in Seattle until Seattle went and drafted Zach Charbonnet in the second round of the draft. So you take good talent in Zach Charbonnet plus draft capital, and it's not a super favorable outcome for Kenneth Walker. The thing that we need to put into context is what Kenneth Walker is going into this upcoming season. He's going into a situation where he will probably be battling for goal line work, but I would say it's going to favor him more than Charbonnet just because he's the guy that's been there for a year already. No workload in the receiving game. 0. Not only because they brought in Zach Charbonnet, who does have the better hands when in comparison to Kenneth Walker, but they're bringing in Jackson Smith-Njigba, who they used a first-round pick on as well. So now you have DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Zach Charbonnet. And let's not bat an eye at Noah Fant, who's still the tight end 1 there.
Yep.
There is 0 receiving work for Kenneth Walker this upcoming year. So we are banking on at least Kenneth Walker getting a main share of carries. And see, I think it comes down to this. If you believe in the talent of Zach Charbonnet, you know this just doesn't spell good news for Kenneth Walker. Not to say that Charbonnet is going to overtake Kenneth Walker, but it seriously puts a dent into what we all thought was going to be a bell cow workload for Kenneth Walker. So Look, again, don't hear what I'm not saying. Kenneth Walker is still a very talented running back. He is still a very exciting sophomore running back. The situation matters. And Zach Charbonnet puts a wrench in things in that what we thought could be is now out of the picture.
I was on my hands and knees praying for Zach Charbonnet to get second round draft capital.
I was too.
And now I am the saddest boy in all of Minnesota. I could not believe it. Like, in the best part is that Pete Carroll said, "Oh yeah, we want to get Zach. We want to get the screen game more involved more. We think Zach Charbonnet can be a key part of that." You know how many screen routes Zach Charbonnet ran at UCLA? 11. He ran 11. What are we doing?
What are we doing, Pete? What are we doing?
Oh, it's rather frustrating. But yeah, he is by far the biggest winner. And people will be like, well, talent wins out. Talent wins out. I don't know, man. If I'm the Seattle Seahawks, I don't go and just spend a second round pick on Zach Charbonnet, the consensus running back 3 in the class. If I don't 100% trust Ken Walker, I like that. That just smells 50-50 timeshare all over it and splitting red zone carries.
No, and again, yeah, talent wins out. You must not know the talent of Zach Charbonnet, because Zach Charbonnet, we talked about it before the draft, James Conner light. And we've seen James Conner be an effective running back in the past. That's what we're getting.
Yep. It's not going to be fun for Ken Walker, Zach Charbonnet managers in dynasty leagues or in redraft this year. Matter of fact. And it's not fun for dynasty managers of Tyler Algier either. Can we both take a victory lap quick? Like, Cameron, like, can you do it from afar as you're finishing editing this episode? Can we just victory lap like this was coming? Like, we've been saying Tyler Algier is in danger of losing his job. People are like, oh, Tyler Algier, he was pretty good at the end of last year. Did you see last 4 games?
He was
plus rushing attempts in every game, 80 plus rushing yards, 103 of them. Like, Tyler Algier is phenomenal. You want to know what else Tyler Algier is? A 5th round pick. And you want to know who Bijan Robinson is? The best running back prospect we've seen since Saquon Barkley and the 8th overall pick in the NFL draft. That dude got replaced. Straight up. There are no two ways about it. He got replaced. And we were screaming this could potentially happen. And guess what happened? Just pat ourselves on the back here quickly. Here's the thing, though. There are still people in our comments on TikTok.
Too many.
Saying, oh, yeah, but Tyler Algier is still going to have a role. Right? He like Bijan's a rookie. Like, he's not going to overtake a year 1 or 2. Shut up. That's what I have to say. It doesn't matter. Bijan Robinson, generational talent. Best running back prospect we have seen since Saquon Barkley. So here's the deal. The reason why I think people are still hopeful, and Cameron put out a really good point on Twitter. The Atlanta Falcons ran the ball the most times on a per game average last year, like nearly 33 times a game. Like, believe that or not, for how bad they were. They ran the ball the most times on a per game average last year. It was about like 32.8. So here's the deal, though. The problem is that Marcus Mariota ran the ball 6.5 times a game last year. So you're automatically factoring in nearly 7 totes a game to Marcus Mariota. So I'm going to break it down for us here. Desmond Ridder is now the quarterback for the Atlanta Falcons. He averaged right around 4 rushing attempts per game last year. So we're going to factor that in. We're going to decrease to 2.5 games. So we're going to say right around 31 rushing attempts per game last year. Or we can expect 31-ish rushing attempts per game for the Atlanta Falcons this year. Let's give 4 of those to Desmond Ridder. We'll continue that same average. That leaves us 27 carries per game left for the running backs. Bijan Robinson is going to take 17 of those. He's probably going to average 17 carries per game. So that leaves 10 for Tyler Algier. In games where Tyler Algier had 10 or less rushing attempts last year, he only averaged 6.8 fantasy points per game. Now, this is one of those like crazy, when he doesn't touch the ball, he's not as good, which is the entire point. That is the entire point. There is no room for optimism here for Tyler Algier. I 100% believe that. He flat out got replaced by Bijan Robinson, and there is little to no hope for Tyler Algier going into 2023, despite how run-heavy this Atlanta Falcons offense likely will be. You don't just split carries with the 8th overall pick in the 2023 NFL Draft. You just don't. Bijan Robinson has flat out replaced Tyler Algier, and you have to stop having optimism for him in 2023. Rant over. I can conclude my case there. I'm sorry. I'm infuriated by the amount of people who still think Tyler Algier should be relevant despite being a 5th round pick. He's replaced flat out.
You know what my spirit animal is going forward until further notice?
Me hating on Tyler Algier.
Well, that's a pretty good consolation, but I was thinking, and it's not even an animal, it's Travis Kelce after they won the AFC Championship game. And he's telling the Cincinnati mayor, know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni. That's the energy that I'm just going with until we find some TikTok comment section that is like, actually, that's a really good point, which will never happen. But you know how it is.
Yeah, I was going to say you're going to have to keep that energy for the rest of your life. Let's move on. Let's move on to a few more losers, Ty. Look, the running backs had a really tough time in this draft. Both like incoming rookies, their landing spots were all pretty abysmal outside of Bijan and Jahmyr Gibbs after the Lions traded Swift, or before the Lions traded Swift, excuse me. But you have another running back as a loser here, and I actually kind of sneaky like the argument here.
It's Khalil Herbert, and a lot of people look at Khalil Herbert as kind of the, I don't know if offseason darling is the right label for him, but I think a lot of people saw him as this under the radar player because it was just him and Deontay Foreman in the backfield, and with how highly the coaching staff likes Khalil Herbert, I think a lot of people are like, he's kind of a sneaky option going into next year, and all of that got put to bed when the Bears drafted Roschon Johnson in the 4th round. And, I think the other point too for Herbert is that you have to accept the fact that going into this year, the workload split with him and Deontay Foreman at best would have been a 60-40 split in favor of Herbert. It probably would have been close to a 55-45, maybe even a 50-50. Any scenario that had a bigger split was out of the picture. Now you bring in Roschon Johnson, who is probably going to get more and more carries throughout the season because teams just rate him that highly. And the perfect picture to have for Roschon Johnson, not the talent, but just going into next year and the role that he could have, is a Dameon Pierce. They were both overshadowed and both backups in college. Small sample size compared to other incoming rookies, high 4.5 speed with similar splits. It really is the second coming of Dameon Pierce from a situational perspective. So again, as I said, if at best Khalil Herbert's workload split with Deontay Foreman was a 60-40 split, Roschon Johnson in the picture now brings the workload split to probably a 50-25-25 or a 40-30-30. I mean, it's not great. It's not great at all. And with Roschon Johnson being a bigger back, any potential for goal line work is out. It is long gone. So you're kind of hoping for receiving work then to kind of separate Khalil Herbert from the other two backs. And here's the thing. He has almost zero receiving work in the past to prove that he can be a reliable weapon in the passing game. And if I remember correctly, his highest reception total in a season was 16, and that was his first year. And this past year, he only had 12. Like, it is not a strength to Khalil Herbert's game. So again, you take the dent in the workload, zero receiving work, no goal line work. Khalil Herbert went from potential RB3 territory. I shouldn't even say potential. He was looked at as a running back 3 in most dynasty leagues.
Yep.
He's comfortably a running back 5 on your roster now, and he's barely pushing running back 4 on your roster. Khalil Herbert was a smaller name, but one of the biggest losers in the draft, in my opinion.
I'm not sure if I. Oh, excuse me. Wow. That's what happens when I don't speak for like 5 minutes straight. I'm not sure if I entirely agree with Roschon Johnson being Dameon Pierce. I think the competition in Houston was worse than it is in Chicago. I do agree. I think Khalil Herbert's probably going to start with like a 50-30-20 with Khalil Herbert, Roschon Johnson, Deontay Foreman in that order. But like, we're going to see Roschon Johnson eventually creep up and start to eat into more of Khalil Herbert's work. Like, Khalil Herbert was not meant to be a long-term answer. Like, again, you said the receiving isn't just in his arsenal. He's been a between the tackles hard-nosed running back, which he's been really good at, but he's needed a committee to be good. He actually hasn't fared very well without David Montgomery. So we'll see how that backfield shakes out. But he is by far a loser. Again, I like your original assessment of like, he kind of was a darling earlier this offseason of like, Herbert, yeah, he's gonna be one of those sneaky guys you get as an RB3. He's gonna have sneaky like mid-tier RB2 upside, if not like high upside RB2. But yeah, that's pretty much all been killed now with Roschon Johnson coming into town, who I actually think would probably be a decent fit in Matt Eberflus system. I actually don't hate that fit whatsoever. All right, let's move on to our last loser here, Ty. It's Rashad Bateman. We spent a few minutes talking about Rashad Bateman. You released a TikTok, excuse me, the other day, explaining that it was a list of pretty much all the losers from fantasy football. Not all these guys. We actually talked about a few different ones as well, but you included Rashad Bateman, and I agreed with this assessment. The people, however, did not. They didn't like that you included Rashad Bateman there.
I was told to shut up.
They're not putting all their eggs into one basket. 1 minute they don't have enough help, and the next moment they have too many wide receivers. Like, that's not the point. They got Lamar his help. I don't disagree with that statement whatsoever. They went out and got Lamar Jackson weapons. However, that does not mean Rashad Bateman is all of a sudden going to be a fantasy stud because they got Lamar Jackson more weapons. So out of my own curiosity, I ran a poll on my personal Twitter after seeing all of that. And I asked people, how many targets they thought each Ravens pass catcher would demand in the 2023 season. Reasonable question. These were the results. 80% of people believed Mark Andrews will command somewhere between 100 to 120 targets this year. That I agree with. I actually think he might even surpass 120, but you didn't hear it from me. He'll probably sit somewhere between like 110 and 130 would be my best guess. 64% of people think Rashad Bateman will command somewhere between 80 to 100 targets. I think that's pretty reasonable. I think that's 100% fair. 54% of people think Odell Beckham will command less than 80 targets. I would also say that's pretty reasonable. And 55% of people think Zay Flowers, will command less than 80 targets. That I also think is very reasonable. This shows me two things, though. Number one, nobody thinks the Ravens' passing volume will go up, despite Todd Monken now being the offensive coordinator for the Ravens. So Todd Monken, think 2019 Tampa Bay Buccaneers with the 30-30 season from Jameis Winston. You're getting pass-heavy offense. That's what Todd Monken ran in Tampa Bay. Now, I don't think it's going to be like, a full-out air raid from the Ravens, but I do think they'll be passing the ball a bit more this year. But people don't think the passing volume is going to go up. And number two, this is the second thing. I'm just going to read the stat. 14% of people this year think Rashad Bateman can command more than 100 targets. Only 14% of people think he can command more than 100 targets. Only two wide receivers that finished inside of the top 30 wide receivers last year commanded less than 100 targets. So 28 of the 30 wide receivers inside of the top 30 commanded more than 100. Only two did not. Ty, can you guess who they are?
Christian Watson.
Nope.
No. Am I close?
Jacoby Myers and Cooper Kupp.
Oh, no.
Those were the only two inside of the top 30 last year that finished as top 30 wide receivers but commanded less than 100 targets. And Cooper Kupp didn't even play the whole year. So really one. Really, it was only Jacoby Myers. If Rashad Bateman can't command 100 targets, if 64% of the people believe that Rashad Bateman is going to command less than 100 targets, he has no shot as finishing as a top 30 wide receiver. He probably won't even finish as a top 40 wide receiver. That's what happens when you add competition. Unless if Rashad Bateman takes a Jalen Waddle type leap in efficiency, that brother is going to have a hard time finishing as a wide receiver 3 in fantasy leagues. And that's what he was going into this year. He was floating between that wide receiver 36 to wide receiver 28 range probably. I'm putting him outside of my top 36, probably outside of my top 40. That's what happens when you add competition. That's what happens when you don't have a pass-heavy air raid offense. If that's what you believe, if you don't believe the Ravens are going to have a pass-heavy offense, despite Tom Monken being the offensive coordinator, that is what we call a draft day loser, ladies and gentlemen. That's what we call a draft day loser. Case closed there. I love Rashad Bateman, Minnesota Gopher, our boy. But if you don't think Rashad Bateman can command 100 targets, you have no business calling him unaffected by the NFL draft. Simple as that. All right, Ty, any other honorable mentions that we want to throw out there before we wrap up the episode here? Winner or loser?
Yeah, I'll throw out an honorable mention winner. It's the 5th player that'll be released. Actually, I'll keep that one a surprise.
Well, the people will already have the video by the time they listen to this.
That's a good point. But I do want to just touch quickly on all the quarterbacks that were thought to be done and dusted within the next 2 years because their team would have drafted a quarterback in the draft this year. Geno Smith, Jared Goff, Kirk Cousins, specifically. Those 3 guys were all are on teams that a lot of people said, oh, they will definitely look to address the quarterback position in the future by taking a rookie this year. Seattle and Minnesota all passed on a quarterback that would give that impression. And I say that because Detroit took Hendon Hooker in the 3rd round, but Hendon Hooker in the 3rd round, and it was reported today that Detroit is going to look into an extension for Jared Goff at some point down the road.
Yeah.
No one knows when that is, but it's going to happen sometime down the road. So honorable mention are all those veteran quarterbacks, especially Geno's. I mean, I really should say it like this. All 3 of those guys were all very fantasy relevant and very dependable options last year.
Yep.
There's really no reason to not suspect that won't happen this year.
Yeah. They managed to slide out of the draft somewhat unscathed. We'll see what it means for them in future years. But yes, for now, they are looking mighty fine for the next 2 years in the fantasy landscape. That will wrap out this episode of the Fantasy Football Fellas podcast. Again, if you are not subscribed to the pod, please make sure to do that. You're going to be alerted when we drop a new episode. It helps us out immensely. Same with subscribing to the YouTube channel. Helps us out immensely. You're going to get daily content from us in the form of shorts. You can get daily content in the form of 2 podcasts a week. You can get daily content in the form of now 8 to 12-minute YouTube videos coming midweek. It's coming on Wednesdays here for the month of May. Then we're going to move to a Monday, Wednesday format during the months of June and July. And then for the regular season, we're bringing you 3 a week. I mean, we're just upping the content as we go, baby. So we are looking forward to bringing you more content. If you want more, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We are excited to chat fantasy football with you all this upcoming season. For that, 2 of the 3 Stooges being dudes here on the Fantasy Football Fellas podcast. We will see you all on Thursday for a little rookie mock draft action. We'll see you then. Deuces.
Deuces.